in the journey of spiritual evolution as outlined by Advaita Vedanta. The cultivation of certain inner virtues is essential for a seeker to become fit for self-inquiry and the realization of Brahman. Among these, the Sixfold Virtues known as Sampati occupy a central place. These 6 qualities: Shama, tranquility of mind; Dhamma, control of the senses; Aparati, withdrawal; Haa, forbearance; Shraddha, faith; and Samadhana, concentration, are considered mental disciplines that prepare the aspirant for the subtle pursuit of self-knowledge. The importance of Sampati is especially emphasized in texts like the Viveka Chudamani, Atmabodha, and Bhagavad Gita. These virtues are not standalone traits but deeply interrelated qualities that collectively purify the mind and stabilize the intellect. In the absence of these disciplines, even the loftiest teachings of the Upanishads may fail to produce their intended transformative effect. Therefore, Sampati acts as a bridge between the preliminary qualifications of Viveka and Vairagya in the final pursuit of moksha through Shrav and Manana and Nididhyasana. The first 2 of these virtues, Shama and Dhamma, are the foundational groundwork for inner discipline. Shama refers to the quietude or calmness of the mind. It is the deliberate effort to reduce the mind's engagement with distractions and maintain a state of inner stillness. This virtue requires sustained introspection and disidentification from the ever-changing thoughts that crowd our mental space. The Viveka Chudamani explains Shama as the ability to keep the mind from wandering toward external objects and keep it directed inward. It is cultivated through detachment and deep contemplation, enabling the seeker to distinguish between the real and the unreal. Complementary to Shama is Dhamma, the control over the external sense organs, whereas Shama deals with the mind's tendencies. Dhamma addresses the physical senses like sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. A mind that is tranquil but whose senses are uncontrolled quickly be pulled back into the world of distraction. Dhamma therefore ensures that the senses obey the commands of the inner will rather than running autonomously toward sense objects. The Bhagavad Gita also reinforces this discipline by emphasizing control over the senses as a prerequisite for wisdom. Together, Shama and Dhamma bring about a level of control over both the internal and external faculties of perception and reaction, setting the stage for higher spiritual pursuit. Once some mastery over the mind and senses has been achieved, the virtue of Aparati becomes possible. Aparati is generally translated as withdrawal or cessation from worldly engagements and duties that are not directly related to the spiritual quest. This does not necessarily mean physical renunciation, although in some cases it might take that form. More deeply, it signifies an internal disinterest in worldly affairs and a turning inward towards self-realization. The Atmabodha and the Ridrishai Viveka both indicate that withdrawal is not escapism but a mark of inner maturity, where the mind naturally gravitates toward the self rather than external stimuli. Aparati arises when the seeker no longer derives joy or identity from worldly roles, titles, relationships, or possessions. It is not a forced abstention, but a natural letting go born out of discernment and dispassion. When the pull of the external world is no longer strong, the mind finds increasing ease in remaining in the contemplative state. This makes Aparati a vital step in the deepening of Shama and Dhamma, for it reinforces the mind's inward direction and gives it freedom from obligations that divide its attention. As the seeker continues to evolve, challenges, obstacles, and suffering are inevitable, and it is here that TDKSHA becomes vital. TDKSHA is the ability to endure all dualities, pleasure and pain, heat and cold, praise and blame without reacting or allowing them to disturb the inner equanimity. It is not a passive suffering but an active, courageous forbearance grounded in knowledge that all such experiences are transient and unreal. The Bhagavad Gita repeatedly points to this virtue when urging the seeker to remain balanced in success and failure, gain and loss. TDKSHAE protects the seeker from despair from difficult times and prevents elation during favorable times, ensuring that the mind remains balanced and centered. This balance is essential because the mind that gets affected by every experience cannot engage in subtle spiritual inquiry. For instance, while doing nididhyasana, the mind must be unwaveringly focused. Without TDKSHA, even the smallest discomfort would break the thread of contemplation. In this way, forbearance acts as an armor against the constant changes of the world and the body, allowing the seeker to maintain the direction and depth of their spiritual practice. Shraddha, the fifth virtue, is oft misunderstood as mere belief, but in Vedantic terminology, it refers to a deep belief and faith in the words of the Guru and the scriptures. It is born not out of blind acceptance, but through initial understanding and trust in the revealed knowledge that leads to liberation. According to the Brahma Sutras and Viveka Chudamani, Shraddha is essential because the truths of Vedanta cannot be verified through empirical means, they must be realized through direct experience. But until then, the seeker must rely on the testimony of those who have already walked the path. This faith acts as a support during times of doubt and confusion, enabling the seeker to persevere through the phases of manana and nididhyasana. Without Shraddha, even the most profound teachings can be dismissed or misinterpreted. Faith thus becomes a subtle thread that connects the seeker to the tradition, the teacher, and the scriptural wisdom, making it possible for true understanding to take root. It also opens the heart to receptivity, which is crucial when confronting the profound teachings of non-utility that often seem to contradict the empirical logic of the world. Finally, samadhana is the fruit and culmination of all the previous virtues. It is the unwavering concentration or single-pointedness of the mind. A mind trained in shama and dhamma, withdrawn through aparati, stable through TDK, satre, and strengthened by Shraddha naturally becomes fit for samadhana. This state is not the same as a meditative trance. Rather, it is the ability to keep the mind focused on the highest truth Brahman without wavering. The Viveka Chudamani describes samadhana as the inner absorption of the intellect in the contemplation of the self, free from the distractions of worldly concerns. It is the mind's capacity to remain undisturbed in its inquiry into who am I, without falling prey to doubt, fear, or distraction. This virtue is indispensable for the final stages of Vedantic sadhana, where the seeker dwells in deep meditation and ultimately realizes their true nature as non-dual Brahman. Samadhana ensures that the inner fire of self-inquiry does not flicker and that the practice does not become mechanical or superficial. When samadhana is established, the mind becomes a steady lamp that illuminates the truth of the self in all circumstances. Thus the Ashat Sampati serve as the inner infrastructure of spiritual discipline in Vedanta. They are not sequential steps but mutually reinforcing qualities that must be cultivated in tandem. Together, they bring about an integrated transformation of the seeker's inner world, making the intellect subtle, the mind calm, and the heart receptive. With these virtues in place, the seeker becomes a fit vessel at Hikarik for the highest knowledge, which alone leads to liberation. These qualities are not merely ethical ideals, but are deeply practical tools that purify the mind and prepare it for the subtleties of self-knowledge. The teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, Viveka Chudamani at Mahabodha, Brahma Sutras, and Diridrishai a Viveka all stress the indispensability of these virtues for any serious aspirant. Without them, the mind remains agitated, fragmented, and unfit for the vision of non-utility. But with them, the mind becomes a polished mirror in which the eternal self shines clearly and unmistakably. In this way, Ashat Sampati forms a sacred discipline that bridges the outer practices of sadhana and the inner realization of the self.